On this crossover episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, I am joined by Lorin Cox of the Locked On Bears. We talk about the biggest storylines heading into Sunday's matchup, and we give our final score prediction.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Locked On Texans and Locked On Bears listeners and viewers, to this Thursday crossover episode of the Locked On Texans podcast and Bears podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you to all of our everydayers coming back to watch our shows as we continue to talk Bears, Texans, all things surrounding these two franchises and more. I'm your Texans football analyst, Johnson Sports Guy Hickman. On the other side of the screen, my man, Lorin Cox. Has been a couple of years since I've seen my guy, and it's a perfect time to get back into the groove. We got a former number 2 overall quarterback from last year going up against number 1 overall quarterback this year. That is, I think, a part of the biggest storylines. But before we get started with today's show, I want to let you guys know that today's episode is presented by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Lorin, let's dive right into it. Biggest storylines for the Chicago Bears heading into the Sunday night matchup. And they had a bad year last year. You get Caleb Williams, the whole franchise turns around. Now you got primetime games second week into the NFL season, but that's kind of crazy to me.
Yeah, you know, Chicago's always used to get in the spotlight even when they're bad. We usually see 1 or 2 big primetime games, usually against a division opponent, and doesn't always go well, but kind of worried about that with this one too, right? The storyline for the Bears is, you know, how they respond to week 1. The Bears won, but it wasn't pretty, and I think there's a feeling like we want to see this team do better and be better, particularly the offense, particularly Caleb Williams, but it's not just Caleb. The quarterback needs to be better, but the offensive line needs to be a lot better. The running game needs to be better. Even the receivers, which were supposed to be the strength of this offense, you know, dropped a couple passes last week. Like a lot of sort of sloppiness across the offense, and it's not like they're coming into some easy matchup against Houston to get right back on track. It's going to be even a bigger test than what the Bears had week 1. And the offense failed that test, but the team as a whole barely passed.
I think one of our biggest storylines for the Houston Texans right now is just, you know, following up last week's performance. Joe Mixon, AFC Offensive Player of the Week. I think he ran the ball probably better than we've seen a Houston Texans running back run the ball since Arian Foster to open up his week 1 debut as a new Houston Texan member. So just following up and building on that game, the message around the Houston Texans franchise for our Chicago Bears fans and any of our Texans fans that may not know this, it's all about stacking good days, good moments, good plays, good drives, good opportunity. How can you stack and continue to get better? Because ultimately this team does have championship aspirations. And so I think for Houston, is this a quote-unquote trap game? The Bears are coming off a win versus your division rival with the Tennessee Titans, and they did it with, I think, a dominated defense. I think you guys got after Will Levis for 4 times, 2 scores on defense, I believe. So how can you, A, not look like a fool and just build off of what you were able to accomplish out of that Indianapolis Colts game? I think that's the biggest storyline for Houston. And also taking away any deep plays. Houston allowed 3 50 or more yard plays against the Indianapolis Colts. Now, Anthony Richardson, he has the big arm. Shane Steichen will dial up a lot of those down the field plays. I'm not 100% sure if that's what the Chicago Bears offense has. But under Caleb Williams, we only have 4 quarters of work to go off of, to reference. But just making sure that that's not a trend throughout the season. We don't want 3 50-yard bombs. You definitely don't want to allow your quarterback to get comfortable enough to say, hey, I got time to launch 3 50-yard bombs.
Yeah, the Bears would love to launch some 50-yard bombs, but didn't really have the opportunity last week. And I think that's something they would like to get more into offensively. But the offensive line was such a problem, particularly on the interior against Tennessee, that It was pressure in Caleb Williams' face a lot, and you didn't have the room to, step up in the pocket and throw those big plays downfield. And on the running game side, the run defense, I think the Joe Mixon breakout performance last week, or it's not really a breakout because we know he's good, but big start to the season for them. It's a concern for Bears fans because the Bears struggled with Tony Pollard in the first half against Tennessee. He had 64 yards, averaging 7 yards a carry and a touchdown in that first half. But as the entire defense adjusted and kind of shut down a lot of what Tennessee was doing in the second half, Pollard and the Titans running game disappeared. So will the Bears come out and have the kind of sloppy run defense that they started against Tennessee? Or will they be dialed in the way they finished against Tennessee to try and keep Mixon contained? Because if Mixon's running all over them, then your pass rush doesn't have time to get after the quarterback. You don't get those turnovers, and that's where the Bears defense doesn't hold up as well.
Question really quick. Is there a early concern with Caleb Williams? I'm going to say inability, but I also think he's a rookie. Got to learn how to play within reason and not always break the pocket, right? Play within that system, play within the pocket. Is that a concern? Because honestly, for the Houston Texans, we saw Mario Edwards and Foley Fatukasi, two new additions for the Texans, get a couple of sacks, but they're still Daniil Hunter on the outside, reigning defensive rookie of the year, Will Anderson on the outside, Derek Barnett, who's a damn good football player. Is that a concern for the Chicago Bears right now with a unproven offensive line?
I think it's I don't know if I'd raise it to the level of a concern, but it's like something we're keeping an eye on, right? Like Caleb definitely was a little bit too, sometimes too quick to get out of the pocket, and sometimes, could hang in there, and other times definitely needed to get out of the pocket, and the pressure's in his face so quickly that there's just nothing he can do. So it's hard to blame him when, he does get out of the pocket maybe a little bit more than needs to. We did see enough of him working within the structure of the offense. Like once they got into more of like a quick rhythm kind of game in the second half, when they realized, okay, offensive line's not holding up, we got to have quicker, shorter routes for Caleb to get rid of the ball. Then you saw him get a lot more comfortable working within that structure, and it opened up just fine. It's just a matter of how early they get to that, or if the offensive line can hold up better, then maybe he can do more from the pocket. But as you just mentioned, I mean, this Houston Texans pass rush is not going to be anything easier for the Bears than what they had to face last weekend. So it's up to them to sort of gel quickly and find some consistency up front that just wasn't quite there, especially the interior.
I think that's a perfect way to lead us to the biggest matchups, for the Chicago Bears and Houston Texans. On the other side, when we come back, matching up problems, which team has the upper hand to come out with a dub?
This crossover Thursday, Locked On Texans, Locked On Bears podcast is brought to you by our friends at DoorDash. DoorDash is here to bring all of your favorites right to your door so you don't miss any of the action. Having the right snacks and food on game day is so critical to the game experience, especially in a big primetime matchup on Sunday night like this. You got to have the wings, you got to have the chips, you got to have the soda, whatever it is that you need in your game day. DoorDash can bring it to you. It's a great way to support local businesses in your area, local restaurants. If you want restaurant food, DoorDash can get your groceries as well and bring them all into your home. It's super convenient, right from the comfort of your phone, on your couch, dropped off right at your door. And right now, we can help you get a great deal on DoorDash. If you use our promo code LOCKEDFALL24, you'll get 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order. It's a limited time offer and terms apply. The promo is not valid for orders containing alcohol. DoorDash, your door to game day greatness, your door to more. Download the DoorDash app now to order your game day favorites. Must be 21 plus to order alcohol. Drink responsibly. Alcohol only available in select markets. Crossover Thursday podcast is also brought to you by our friends at Hims. Men, when we leave the house, you got to do the man check, right? Phone, wallet, keys, quick look at how your hair looks. But if you're experiencing hair loss, you might not be so confident when you step outside your door, and it's time to get that confidence back and restore your hair with Hims. Hims provides access to a range of hair loss treatments that work all from the comfort of your couch. Hims makes it simple with doctor-trusted treatment options and clinically proven ingredients that regrow hair in as little as 3 to 6 months. The process is simple, and it's 100% online. You just answer a few questions, and a medical provider will determine if treatment is right for you. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedonnfl. That's HIMS, hims.com/lockedonnfl for your personalized hair loss treatment options. hims.com/lockedonnfl. Results vary based on studies of topical and oral minoxidil. Prescription products require an online consultation with healthcare providers who will determine if a prescription is appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for full details and important safety information.
Welcome back in, Locked On Bears, Locked On Texans fans, listeners, and viewers. John, some sports guy Hickman, Lorin Cox, others Locked On Bears. We're talking sports, we're talking football, we're talking Bears, Texans. Biggest matchups is what's on our plate. Lorin, let us know. Texans fans need to know, what should we be quote unquote worried about, concerned, or just keep an eye out in terms of the biggest matchups for the Chicago Bears?
Yeah, I think one of the main things I have my eye on that the Texans fans should watch out for is, like, everyone knows Montez Sweat's, the guy on the Bears defensive line, and it's going to be him versus Tyus Howard at the right tackle spot. But the big revelation for the Bears defense against the Titans last week was everyone else that was able to step up in the Bears pass rush. Sweat had a couple of pressures, was good in the running game, but it wasn't like the dominant take over the game type of performance that he can do sometimes. It was more of like him doing the dirty work and taking a lot of the attention from the offensive line so that other guys get one-on-one matchups elsewhere and then win those and get after the quarterback. So they were rotating a player they traded for this preseason, Darrell Taylor, off of the bench at the other defensive end spot. And he had 2 sacks, including a strip sack, forced fumble. It was a huge turnover for this team, and also had another nice tackle for loss there. And then on the interior, Javon Dexter, a defensive tackle, is starting to flash and come along a little bit for them. So it's not just going to be, okay, find Montez Sweat and leave a tight end and running back on his side. Like, yeah, you need to do that, but you can't just assume, okay, the rest of the guys are not really household names or guys you've heard of, but at least last week against Tennessee, they were able to be a really productive pass rush as a group. And I'm curious to see if they can keep that up against Houston, or if that was just a couple of guys having a big breakout game to start the season, but can't maintain that consistency against a really good opponent this week.
Biggest matchups, I think, for the Houston Texans that'll help them win this game is going to start up front again. It started up front against the Indianapolis Colts, Grover Stewart, DeForest Buckner, Kwity Paye, Raekwon Davis, Latu, the rookie, and they were able to go out there, dominate up front for the most part, especially in terms of being able to run block for Joe Mixon, Dameon Pierce getting in on the action. Tank Dell on the reverse getting in on the action. So I think it's for them, it's going to be Tyus Howard versus Sweat. It's going to be Laramie versus who's on that other end. It's going to be, can Kenya Green replicate the success that he had in terms of a dominant game against the Indianapolis Colts? Can he bring that and stack that performance on top of that against the Chicago Bears? Because the fact of the matter is, I think you guys got playmakers at all 3 levels. Sweat. What's my man? Is it TJ Edwards? Not TJ Edwards. Is TJ Edwards? Am I thinking of the linebacker?
Yeah, him and Tremaine Edmonds are the 2. Yeah.
Tremaine Edmonds. So then you got Jalen Johnson. You guys got some playmakers out there. And for Houston, they're going to want to take their shots, but they're also going to want to make sure that they establish the run, bring those linebackers down. And then you're looking at Nico. Maybe he getting a 50-yard catch. Maybe Tank Dell is, having 3.5 yards of separation, and CJ is just able to kind of drop the ball off in the basket. So overall, I think that the biggest matchup is going to be, how can Houston win the line of scrimmage, win the trenches, and be able to provide the protection that CJ Stroud will need, and the push that Joe Mixon and that running back will need. And defensively, I think it's the same thing. Getting after Caleb Williams, right? He cannot have this can't be his rebound game if I'm the Texans. We can't allow him to go out there. And will he perform better? I'm sure he will. Going into week 2 of his NFL career, I'm sure he'll have better moments, but he can't go out there and win the game. This can't be like one of those games where at the end of the year, when they're judging rookies of the year candidates, oh, look what Caleb Williams did to the Houston Texans in week 2. So just getting pressure on him, man. I don't know if he's ready for the speed of the game right now. And with players, big guys constantly getting in his face throughout 4 quarters, at the end of that game, how gun shy is he going to be? Is he kind of timid a little bit in the pocket? And when he does break out of that pocket, Can Danielle Hunter, can Will Anderson, can Jalen Petrie, who may be around the line of scrimmage, finish plays to bring him down? So I think that's where it starts for the Houston Texans to get a dub against the Chicago Bears. Just getting up in their face defensively and being able to move bodies offensively to give your playmakers opportunities on the outside, in the middle running game, opportunities to make big plays.
Yeah, I think right in that same vein for Bears fans, right? It's like, okay, if Caleb's going to be tested in a lot of those ways up front, we're looking at the wide receiver position right now with Keenan Allen missed practice on Wednesday with a heel injury. That one's expected to be okay, and we're expecting to have Keenan Allen play on Sunday, but he might not be 100%. And then Rome Odunze, the rookie wide receiver, is dealing with a knee injury. I think it's an MCL sprain. He could play, but he's not expected to play. So you'll be down at least one wide receiver and maybe 1.5 if you have a half of a DJ or a half of a Keenan Allen. So that leaves DJ Moore as your top option there going up against Derek Stingley. You
Good
feel
option.
like that's going to be a tough matchup. And then can the Bears get other pass catching weapons to be difference makers here? Can someone else, whether it's Keenan Allen being healthy and you can, he's reliable, or, the tight ends, Cole Kmet and Gerald Everett are big parts of this passing game. Can they get that plus matchup somewhere else to really get this offense going a lot more than we saw in week one? Like, the offensive line needs to give him time, but the receivers have to be able to do something against a good Texan secondary.
Yeah, and I was going to add to that by saying I think the linebacker group for Houston, they're matching up with Cole Kmet. I think he's a damn good tight end in the NFL. I don't want to call him underrated, but when people start to name tight ends, I don't know where he would rank in terms of top 10. But I think he has a case to be in that mix, and hopefully he gets an opportunity to play with Caleb Williams and he pans out so people can see his talent. But I think that for the Bears, if you're having issues with protection up front, you have a tight end like Cole Kmet, you got a rookie quarterback. I kind of look at that and say, well, will he become that security blanket? Will he become that guy that, okay, I got pressure in my face, I can just dump it off to Cole, and maybe he can pick up a few yards and extend plays and extend drives for us? And if that's the case, then and he may end up being the Houston Texans' biggest offseason acquisition. But Azeez Al-Shaair, the linebacker, came over from Tennessee, spent a few years with D'Amico in San Fran. I'm looking at him, and I'm thinking to myself, man, you played a great game against the Colts. You allowed that big pass, lucky pass, but take him out the game. Right? Don't allow the Bears to get comfortable at all. This should be a dominating game for the Houston Texans. And I think Cole Kmet is one of those guys that some people may sleep on, but he can be a difference maker if you allow him to.
Yeah, that's actually one of the big storylines for the Bears this week, is that Cole Kmet played less than 50% of the snaps in week one and had one target, really not involved in the passing game, used a lot as a blocker. And they ended up using Gerald Everett, who they signed from the Chargers, a lot more in the passing game. And it was sort of this question of like, what is that intentional? Is something wrong with Cole Kmet? What's going on here? And the Bears kind of said, game situation and how they want to get different guys involved. Like, they used Gerald Everett as kind of like the number 4 wide receiver more than the tight end. So it was kind of a weird split there, but I think there's going to be more of an intentional push to, yes, use the tight end as the security blanket and try and get Caleb more options here, because his security blankets were DJ Moore and Keenan Allen whenever he could find them with the ball. But if you want to get more things going downfield, like, those are going to be the guys to do it. You need the tight ends and the running backs to be more of that blanket and not just have to go to the wide receiver quick outs, because that's all this offense can do. So that's where they're looking for that step forward. And that means getting more of these weapons all involved.
When we come back, final score predictions for the game. Lorin, really quick, is it big? Is it little? Like, score-wise, do you think is it? What do you feel? Do you think you get something different?
I don't expect the Bears defense to give up a ton of points, but I don't expect the Bears offense to score a ton of points, but something's got to give here in one direction. So I think it's going to be close.
It may be. Let's talk about it when we come back. And before we talk about that, you guys have heard us talk a lot about FanDuel here on the Locked On Network. They are America's #1 sports book. Well, they have a little something different for you guys. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with YouTube TV and their base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season out-of-market game every Sunday. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel any time. And if that's not enough, be sure to check out FanDuel's Profit Boost in the app and use it for FanDuel's double your winnings for all of Sunday. This Sunday, pregame money bet lines. Profit Boost will be starting live this Thursday, later today, actually right now probably. View your account page now to learn more about your boost. Just visit FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook today. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. That's a $45 come up. Final score predictions for this Sunday night game. Chicago Bears, Houston Texans. The Texans are at home. You guys heard your franchise quarterback. Leave early, beat the traffic, do whatever you got to do to get to the NRG Stadium on time, because the Bulls on parade got to rattle a couple of Bears that come into town. Now, final score predictions, Lorin, take it away.
Yeah, the line over on FanDuel Sportsbook is Bears +6.5 as the road underdogs. And that to me feels like about where I would put it. Like, I do think the Houston Texans are going to win this game. I think Bears fans have been penciling this one in as an L since the schedule came out. It's like, okay, Texans in week 2. The Bears aren't going to be where this is not going to be the peak Chicago Bears yet. The Texans are a few steps ahead of where the Bears are in the terms of the building up a young quarterback team building process here. So I do think this Bears defense isn't going to let Houston walk all over them and score a ton of points, but whatever reason, I think it's going to be enough for them. And I think the Bears offense will get a little bit more going than they did against Tennessee, because it was a lot of them getting in their own way. And this is a long preamble to say, I'll go Houston Texans 23, Chicago Bears 16. A few more field goals than either team would like, or maybe there's a missed extra point or a 2-point conversion attempt that fails in there. So we end up getting kind of a funky score, and the Bears end up keeping it a 1-score game there, but maybe the final score looks a little closer than a lot of the game does. The Bears get a touchdown late to bring it within 7, but ends up being a little bit too little, too late, and makes the final score, a little bit more respectable than where parts of the game are earlier on.
Really quick, for my fantasy lovers, Lorin, is there anybody on the Chicago Bears that people should sit this week, or maybe a player you anticipate having a bigger week?
Yeah, I would generally steer clear of the Bears' backfield. Like, DeAndre Swift is the #1 back, and he had a good enough game last week, but everything behind DeAndre Swift is, I don't understand the rhyme. They're rotating 4 different guys there. I don't know. It's hard to piece together. Like, they use one of them on third down some of the time, but it doesn't. Haven't been able to figure out why, or the sense of the rotation behind DeAndre Swift. So I wouldn't rely a lot on that group. And again, like, Cole Kmet hasn't done anything yet this season, so I wouldn't go there. If Keenan Allen is if he's healthy, if he stays off the injury report the rest of the week here, he's the guy to focus on. He had multiple red zone targets, including a touchdown that hit him in the hands and he dropped it. Like, Keenan Allen's going to get his. Caleb Williams already loves throwing the ball to him. He's been more of the security blanket than anybody, and that's who I would keep my eye on.
There we go. Final score prediction for me. You know what, Lorin? You said 6.5 is the line right now.
Yes.
Yeah, I think if Houston can go out there, they held the ball for 40 minutes against the Indianapolis Colts.
Wow.
The last 2 drives for the Houston Texans, 15 minutes. 14 points came away from that. So if they can play keep away with the Bears, and based off what we saw week 1, a struggling offense already, an offense that, do we believe they have the offensive line like the coach has that can allow their quarterback time to get a couple of those bombs off? No, not yet. So this is all we can go based off of. I think if Houston can keep the ball in front of them, make it hard for the Chicago Bears to move the ball and play keep away, this could be a game that can get ugly really soon for the Houston Texans. So I'm looking at a 23-24-10 type of game. I think Houston wins by 2 scores, and I think that we will see another good performance by Joe Mixon. Not 150 on the ground, but just another solid performance from him. And I can also see this being a quote-unquote Tank Dell game where he's getting open because y'all just don't have nobody to stop him. He can beat almost any coverage you throw at him. So I think this will be a game where we say, man, Joe had another solid game, and Tank Dell played very good for the Houston Texans. 24-10.
One thing I want to ask you about quick before we wrap up is how do you feel about the Texans special teams? Because that was a big part of the Bears win in week 1. They had a blocked punt for a touchdown, and they also had a really long punt return and a really long kickoff return. Neither one were touchdowns, but they gave the Bears offense really good field position. And then they love their rookie punter, Torrey Taylor. He can flip the field and pin offenses back. How do you feel about the general operation of the Texans special teams? Are there any concerns there? Do you feel like that's a strong group overall? I don't know anything about Texans.
No, I think that's a strong group. The Houston Texans have had one of the better special team units in the NFL. Like, even when they were going out there playing for tie games and they were only winning 3 games in the season or 4 games in the season, and Davis Mills was the quarterback, or it was Jeff Driscoll and the Driscoll cat. No matter what it was, the special teams unit for the Houston Texans have been well, and they love Townsend down here. You mentioned y'all punter up there, man. He can flip a field down here. He can flip a field, and I think you don't necessarily want to see a punter too much, but he is a special weapon where you can kind of, if you're throwing out on a 30-yard line, he can get you and have the offense start, the opposing team offense. They can start on the 30-yard line. He can flip a field. I like the special team units. They're coached by, I think, one of the better special team coaches in the NFL, Frank Ross. Shout out to British Brooks. He had a big hit on special teams last week. Noah Hewitt played some damn good special teams snaps for the Houston Texans. Very good unit. And I think once the league continues to figure out ways to go about the new kickoff rule, scheming up how to get extra yards, and we're already seeing more returns, I think this special teams unit can be even more dangerous, excuse me.
It'll be a big matchup then, because both teams are feeling good about their special teams, and all it takes, right, is that one big play. Is it the big return? Is it a block somewhere? Is it tackling a guy way farther back? Like, that's the kind of thing that have a big swing in this game. So look for either team to have a big special teams play. I will put that in my prediction as well. I don't know who it will, but somebody's going to have a big special teams play that has a big impact in this one.
I do want to shout out former Houston Texans legend Jonathan Owens.
Yes, he scored the touchdown last week on the block. Yes,
special teams. Shout out to the legend. Oh my gosh! Thank you, Chicago Bears fans. Thank you, Houston Texans fans, for watching, listening, and tuning in into today's show. We really appreciate it. Follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12. Please like, subscribe, and comment on the Locked On Texans podcast on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast. Lorin, let everybody know where they can find you as well.
Yeah, same thing on Twitter at Cox Sports 1, and the Locked On Bears YouTube channel is always the best place to catch the video, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, Texans and Bears, peace.